There have been better families, haven't there? Certainly considering what Honglu's is like, based on what we've met so far. But next is the mission in question. In the makeshift command tent, Dante asked, "Who are the people with Virgilius and Charon?" Roger was disappointed in them not even waving back. Well, that's because Charon has no interest in a lot of things, and Virgilius can barely tolerate being in the same close space as you. Not talking to you unless it's necessary. Although Dante saw that this wasn't about Virgilius, as Don Quixote's attention was focused on something that made her hyperventilate. Dante asked if she was okay. Massault, in his usual autistic manner, observed that her gradual acceleration of her breathing patterns occurred 10 minutes before. It wasn't reported as it posed no risk to her health and well-being. Ryushu knew of a good way of dealing with a case of hyperventilation, which Dante understood to mean choke Don Quixote. Dante wanted to look away at what that Blood Knight was about to do. Don Quixote was then choked by Ryushu, and apparently she was being difficult to her, much to the irritation of Ryushu. This caused Ishmael to step forward, as she could see what was coming, that Ryushu was about to do something that they'd rather she not do. That's one thing that we can count on with you, Ishmael. Being the voice of reason. You also knew what was going on. That there was a fixer from Hana Association there. Dante remembered that they were the association that oversaw all Fixer Association activities. They also dealt with fixers, their rankings, and fixer officers. This was understood due to Don Quixote's lectures, even though they didn't pay much attention to that. The other fixers had their full attention towards that fixer from the Hana Association, who was distinct in their pure white outfits. They also had their attention towards Virgilius, the Red Gaze. Clearly it's not often that a colour fixer appears. Roger noting that he's another superstar. Dante understood that they were used to this. Or rather his presence after, almost a year with him on the bus, while the others had their attention commanded just by him being there. Except for Don Quixote, who was overwhelmed by excitement when she saw him on the bus, as she was on the verge of passing out from the sheer joy of getting to work next to a colour fixer. Likely this was when she was recruited after Yi Sang was, upon finding out his job offer. I wouldn't be surprised if she prostrated before him, bowing repeatedly, chanting, "I'm not worthy! I'm not worthy!" much to his annoyance. Ishmael wasn't surprised by this ability to draw attention, as it's rare to be made a colour fixer. Camille was talking to the chat, considering it to be no longer a backwaters backstreets operation due to him being there, when he spoke of his pre-game stream, where he told the chat that it has to be more than an urban nightmare. Apparently, the chat is worried about him. He assured them that all he needs is their support. And this was annoying to Urutius. Although between this and Urutius' 3-second tongue clicking, as in tongue clicking every 3 seconds, Dante was unsure which was more annoying. Thankfully, they weren't the only ones losing patience with Camille. The fixer from Hana Association North cautioned him that, from this point onward, any recording activity save for official work-related recordings with prior authorization from the Hana Association will no longer be permitted. those in violation of this will have penalty points, and those that have gathered there are aware that too many penalty points can result in fixer license suspension, which is likely needed to work as a fixer, never mind joining an office or even making an office. Although granted that's a worst case scenario, at least on the surface, as it could also result in a grade demotion, which is what happened to Roland the Black Stain after his indiscriminate vengeance-fueled rampage, where he killed those deserving of death, such as half of the middle in the south, and I don't know why they didn't look for him after he was done. The Romanos cartel, a Thumb subsidiary, was devastated as well, although he did kill those that would likely bite him in the rear later, such as the father of Eileen, who had found the Church of Gears, and Jehon's son, which would cause him to distort into a puppeteer. Yes, quite a few penalty points must have been accumulated after that, certainly enough to get him down to grade 9. Virgilius looked at him when he encountered him during that rampage, and knew it was pointless to talk him out of what he was doing, and he probably considered it suicide to fight him. And you'd need to know what your combat capability was like, and also the combat capability of your opponents to be able to determine that, and yeah, he didn't fancy his chances. Camille got the message and told the chat that it was it for that show. He'll give a valorous noble fight and he'll see them next time, reminding them to cast their votes for the Fixer I Want to Have Dinner With contest. It closes midnight. I suspect in District 23 that'll be Fixer I Want to Have as Dinner. The other fixers got the message as well, turning off recording devices that would be illegal to use in District 14, and put them back in their cases and bags. This was a relief to Ishmael. The Hana fixer asked about the woman with the apparently dislocated jaw, who appears to be part of their group, asking if she's alright. She was talking about Don Quixote with her mouth open. Virgilius told her not to mind Don Quixote. It's easier that way. Roughly translated, she's usually like this around high-profile fixers. Then a P-Corp employee walked out in front of the fixers. He spoke of this as round 4 in La Mancha Land. Yes, this has happened 3 times already. And that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, does it? He was apparently glad to be there, happy to see them all. But Dante could tell otherwise, as he wasn't glancing in their direction. Likely this was corpo speak for, everyone here? Good. Let's get this over with. He was a Class 3 documentation staff member at P-Corp Archival Department, Alessio. He introduced the Hana fixer as Han-Ul. Sinclair understood that head manager Cesara wasn't there to brief them. Otis understood that she wasn't willing to dirty her boots coming all the way there. Well, she can't be everywhere at once. Alessio wanted to get on with the briefing. The lights went off and the screen was projecting various images on the monitor that was being loaded up. English failing me again. This made Heathcliff bored already with all the red tape that they have to go through. Yi Sang spoke of the briefing that had yet to even commence, and this wasn't looked highly upon by the fixers around them. Ishmael was especially annoyed, asking if they can pretend that they don't know him. Dante felt something of a fixer himself, sitting there with those around them. All this had been in larger operations. This was a skirmish compared to them. Dante wanted to know more, but the mission briefing was getting started, so this could wait. Alessio told them about La Mancha Land, which will manifest in that area within the next 3 hours. It's an officially recognized urban nightmare. Dozens of fixers have attempted and failed to take it down. He told them to hold a moment of silence for its victims. While Don Quixote was respectful for those who had fallen in battle, casting their gaze downwards, Dante could count on 2 hands how many actually took this seriously. Some of the fixers blamed them for getting ahead of themselves. Yeah, victim blaming. Even Dante could tell that none of them saw them as victims. This was boring to them. Clearly this was heard before. After that, Alessio directed their attention to that screen. The display showed several low-resolution images. According to Alessio, the origin of La Mancha Land dates back 200 years in the past, and that's a conservative estimation. So around the time that Cassetti became a blood fiend. This was based on photographic evidence and the level of decay of the buildings and materials retrieved and analysed for this. It was, however, largely unknown and invisible to the public until 2 months ago. So around the time that the Damned Dozen were dealing with the Lade lineage, the Kurokumo clan, and the Monolith in District 20's backstreets. He also mentioned the raw material that the amusement park was. A fixer muttered for him to get on with it. Alessio told them that P Corp has a responsibility to share sufficient information to all participants of the mission, likely so that they don't get accused of hiding what is known, and that they know where they stand with this. This didn't stop that fixer from complaining about this, telling him to stop wasting time, and Han-Ul then told them that they're under a rather severe misconception. She understood that some of their present company are consummate professionals with the skill and grit that most people won't take lightly. This was amusing to both that fixer and Auritius, but she saw most of them as fodder, common as muck, painfully average, garden variety, bargain bin fixers, who are most likely going to meet their dirt-filled miserable ends while stuck on urban nightmare duty their whole careers. That's all they'll ever be. Most of them will fall by the wayside before this path leads them anywhere, over even passing significance, let alone joining the ranks of Grade 1 fixers like herself. Even perhaps 1 or 2 of them might make it to Grade 1, but even that isn't a guarantee that they'll ever dream of getting near even the Red Gazer's greatness. They might have the honour of dying next to him, feeling the disparity between themselves and those who are at the top of the city. This shut everyone up. Well, let's be honest. We can't fault this Hana fixer for not being honest. That could be summed up with, most of you are these suicide soldiers who are likely to get in this mission. Work hard enough and smart enough and you might get to our level, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Heathcliff understood that Han-Ul was somewhere right below Virgilius. Don Quixote confirmed this. Han-Ul told them to know their places and pay attention to the briefing. Alessio thanked her and continued with the briefing that the reason for La Manchaland's sudden appearance there has yet to be explained, though its influence is still confined to the back streets. Its uniqueness poses a tangible threat to Peacock just by being there. The overly dramatic fixer agreed the local housing market crashed due to it. Then he walked up to them and started to chat them up. Specifically, the damned dozen. All but Hong Lu ignored him, asking if he's right about that. This fixer thought it was insane when it showed up there for the first time. It appeared in the middle of a dense population center. It was two hells in one, which caused a lot of screaming in pain and the spilling of blood. Ryushu liked how he put it. The overly dramatic fixer spoke of District 16's buildings being well known for being quite elastic. They got bent along the newly manifested La Manchaland, but they didn't crumble. La Manchaland pulsed and pushed the buildings away, which crushed people when the buildings were bent out of place. A major design flaw, although thanks to P-Corp's singularity, likely something to do with compression, which is why semi-permanent canned ice cream is a thing, and why compression is part of the title of their elite troops. This meant that there was a lot of survivors for something that devastating. The people inside the buildings were safe. Then they set up a 3-kilometer radius buffer zone to limit any construction in the area where it manifested, but Gregor was concerned that it was just 3 kilometers. Faust explained that buildings utilizing P-Corp singularity have a high level of elasticity. So building using that technology, well, anything built with that is very unlikely to collapse or fall apart. It was decided that it was safe enough that close to La Manchaland, that a slight overlap with the residential area was acceptable. The overly dramatic fixer then said what was likely an advertising slogan for P-Corp. They can make a safe home anywhere. But that claim to fame crumbles, the faith in their technology growing shaky, all because of that disaster, which explained why the real estate market there crashed. It was so bad that the locals stormed La Manchaland. Dante understood that's why the banners were posted where they were posted. Han-Ul continued by saying that La Manchaland presents itself as an extravagantly decorated amusement park. It's been reported that disembodied music could be heard within an 8-kilometer radius, which attracted some civilians. Most that entered have yet to return. Paula asked if the music has hypnogenic qualities. Alessio couldn't rule that out as too many visitors ignored the warning signs and perimeter tapes, considering the use of earplugs as a precaution. The Blood Fiend Hunter asked what they should, or rather must do, once La Manchaland materialized. Han-Ul told them to ready themselves for immediate, or indeed imminent combat, as there were to be Perios giving away balloons or popcorn vendors or staff members with a song of greeting. Romero understood what to expect. There wouldn't be just blood fiends. This surprised some there, not knowing that they were real. Although one has heard of the Blood Red Knight, the star of the city, threats. Some say that she was a powerful blood fiend. That fixer that didn't believe that they were real saw this as a rumor. The Blood Fiend Hunter found this amusing. He knows how powerful and stubborn the Blood Red Knight was. They had no right to talk about it so lightly. Yeah, it took 2 Grade 1 fixers to take her out the first time, Roland and Angelica. It took much more to take care of her the second and third times. Han-ul confirmed that the only things there are blood bags and the blood fiends that turn them, sharpening their fangs to fill their ravenous hunger with their blood. Alessio then shared the detail that he was about to share before he was cut off. The raw material that made up every structure within La Mancha Land was human blood dating back over 200 years in the past. This surprised Sinclair. Romero was looking forward to this now. If there's only blood fiends in there, they'll waste no time clearing away the less experienced. Rodia asked if that's how all fixers talk. That the way he talks about blood fiends was how Ishmael used to talk about the Great Lake. Ishmael was mildly annoyed by this, as there's a good reason for this, as the smallest mistake can be costly, and it's irritating when others don't even understand the dangers and doze off. Which Heathcliff didn't do due to someone constantly stepping on his foot. Sinclair commented on the nice weather. He was the one stepping on his foot, due to Ishmael coercing him. Dante wisely decided to stay out of this. Han-ul stated that if they managed to survive for 6 hours within La Mancha Land, the music announcing the closure of the park will start playing. This was cross-referenced from fixers and civilians that managed to make it out of there alive. Once this starts playing, they have 30 minutes to get their worthless out of there. If they don't, they'll be trapped there, until it manifests again, where they'll have to fight an endless battle against the blood fiends in the meantime. Basically, if they stay there, they're trapped, and then they're burned. The Blood Fiend Hunter adds that it's, well, that's if they survive that long. Alessio then added that there are eyewitness reports where some fixers identified missing people aboard certain amusement park rides, but it's not important for those currently there. Han-ul mentioned that based on testimonies and reports from survivors, they've been able to establish a map of La Mancha Land, comprised of 4 separate areas. None have been able to reach the final area. A certain device in Area 1, 2, and 3 needs to be activated before the final area can be unlocked. Areas 1 and 2 have had the device activated in the past. Area 3, none have managed to activate the device there yet. The Blood Fiend Hunter understood that they just had to head to Area 3 to save time, and Han-ul made it clear that if they don't activate all 3 devices within the time that they have, the devices reset when La Mancha Land disappears, meaning they will have to divide their efforts, team up with each other, choose an area to deal with. Romero understood this to mean split up, activate the devices, and then head to the final area. This is assuming that every team successfully activates the device that they're responsible for. Alessio confirmed this and suspected that the key to solving the La Mancha Land problem is within the final area. This wasn't concerning to Romero, laughing briefly at this. Han-ul asked if there was something that he'd like to share with them. Romero found it funny that they have to activate some kind of device in each section to unlock the final area, seeing it as kind of a game, challenging the might of La Mancha Land to beat it, with conditions to fulfill. The Blood Fiend Hunter under him asked how should they know what they're thinking, seeing them as born twisted. Paula had something to confirm to Han. The Zwei Association was there to rescue their client, not for the eradication reward. Camille told her not to leave him out. She then corrected this by saying that the Zwei and the Sunk have no reason to enter the 3 areas to activate these devices. Han-Ul stepped aside and let Alessio take over with this for the sake of accuracy. Alessio understood that they all have their reasons for being there. So they set up an eradication dividend fund in Pequot, giving out the reward money based on how much each contributed to the eradication of La Mancha Land. Romero added that this was assuming a successful outcome. Alessio continued by saying that if that isn't the goal, they can fulfill their own respective contracts as long as they acknowledge that they won't be receiving any payouts from that upon successful completion of the expedition. They're free to do as they will, although he requested that they submit a copy of their contract so that they're aware of the details. Yes, they need to get their files in order. And Paula understood. They'll submit this as soon as the briefing is adjourned. The Blood Fiend Hunter took this opportunity to declare something, that if any of them intended to ride on the coattails to pilfer more of the reward than they deserve, he'll hunt them down too, asking if they understood this. Romero made it clear that this wasn't an empty threat. He intended to carry it out, and that there's no guarantee that he can be stopped. Sinclair could see that he was intense. Han-Ul could see that much money hinged on that contract, although she reminded them that the primary objective is to minimize casualties and to prevent additional disappearances, telling them to leave their selfishness behind and cooperate for the greater good. Oh, what a joke. The greater good is a fluid and ever-changing concept that's meaningless by itself. It's whatever those with power and authority deem it to be. They'll work together because it serves their interests. For them, that's motivation enough. The Blood Fiend Hunter was willing to do this, if it's possible, and Han-Ul didn't bother to contradict him. She won't hesitate to put her foot down, but she saw it as pointless to prevent all infighting. Don Quixote was the most obedient of them regarding this. Jia Zichun asked who's going with who and to which area. Han-Ul made it clear that they'll be assigned to teams and areas based on their internal data analyses of their individual capabilities, potential and alignment. Jia Zichun understood that they should avoid overcrowding, such as saddling them with a group of a dozen or so people. Passive-aggressive much? Han-Ul made it clear that they'll avoid bottlenecking too many people in the same area. Roger could tell that she's not hiding her disdain. Sinclair wasn't fond of her tagging along, and Honglu was silent. Yeah, and she's the nicest of his siblings. Alessio then said that if there's no further questions, he'll be assigning them all to teams and area pairs. Then Don Quixote shouted, "Hold!" This attracted the attention from everyone. Some of them wanted this briefing to be over. Ishmael was more annoyed that this was happening, and Heathcliff was woken up by this. Gregor told him that this was a good time to go back to sleep. Lourdes made it clear that if it was in her previous workplace, Don Quixote doing this would likely result in summary execution. Alessio asked what her question was. Don Quixote stated that important information was missing from the briefing. Alessio checks what he had, while Don Quixote asked when the rescue operation for the victims of that terrible amusement park shall commence. That the operation on such a grand scale might be difficult to accomplish with only the help of the Soins de Sang. Paula looked at her as if she was a complete lunatic. Which, of course, she was. The overdramatic fixer was struggling to put his thoughts into words. Then Camille asked if this was an act of hers. He likely saw it as interesting how not mainstream it was. It was also old-fashioned. Apparently his viewers weren't missing much. Paula saw this as a misunderstanding. Their contract has nothing to do with rescuing visitors. Theirs is a search and rescue operation for a specific visitor requested by a client. Don Quixote asked who shall make up the rescue party for the rest of the victims. Then Camille realized that this wasn't an act. She really believed this. This makes Limbus Company look like complete idiots to the others, when in fact Heathcliff was wasting his intelligence, and Don Quixote, when not wearing Rocinante, was deranged. Okay, no, quite the opposite. Dangerous. She was deranged with them. But of course, they didn't know that. Nor do they care. Ishmael was resisting the urge to hit Don Quixote on the head for this. Paula told her that unless they've been contracted to rescue someone, they should pursue the missing persons flyers for rewards. For Don Quixote, it wasn't about the money. She saw so many valiant fixers there, yet no one there was there to rescue the surviving victims, asking if she's not one of the Zwei. They call themselves your shield. Camille confirmed this. They're the shield of whoever hires them. Don Quixote doesn't believe that a fixer must risk themselves for the shallow promise of payment for services rendered, asking when did the association fixers abandon honor for greed? Well, that's how the associations are now. As fixers are essentially soldiers of fortune. They follow whoever pays them enough. This was getting annoying to Camille, asking if she knows who she's talking to. And she does. He's Camille of Sunk Association West, Section 3. Feature of the Fixers Monthly magazine, currently number 7 in the Fixers That I Want to Have Dinner With contest. While he was initially impressed that she's heard of him, he was surprised to find out that he was only 7? Ooh, that's gotta sting! He then focused on this, assuming that she knows about what he's about to do next. He doesn't waste breath with words. When a dispute is made or a statement is needed, they duel. An official duel to the death. She asked if he would heed her words if she bested him. Camille wanted her to clarify this. Don Quixote asked should she defeat him, will he swear on his honor that he'll assist them in the rescue mission. Camille was surprised that she was seriously challenging him to a duel. Dante said no, but Don Quixote ignored them and challenged Camille to a duel. Dante saw things as spiraling out of control. You're seriously surprised by now? As for Virgilius, he was staying out of this. This was more intimidating than his outright anger. Alessio decided to end the briefing there, eagerly wanting to get out of the way of the two combatants. Massol understood it to be pointless to stop this, based on prior experience, due to their expressions indicating no interest in what others would say about this. Dante understood that she's lost it. Don't you mean more so than usual? Faust then made it clear, neglecting to mention this earlier due to a lack of prying eyes, they should avoid inverting time when others are watching them, especially in a duel which will accomplish nothing. They also need to avoid summoning identities from other worlds or using EGO. Dante refused to see what was wrong with that, as they'll be using them when inside. Don Quixote told them not to use them on her, Dante questioning her sanity to a greater extent. She wanted to have a duel that's fair and just her strength and none others. Dante was silent at this. Camille agreed to this, regretting that there are no fans to watch him wipe the floor with her. But others will spread the story. He wouldn't throw his gauntlet at her out of pity, seeing this as one-sided, saying, "En garde, petit novice," or "En garde, little novice," as it's roughly translated into English. Then the duel begins. And this was quite clearly a scripted battle, where it's as one-sided as Camille saw it as. Despite Don Quixote's best efforts, Camille was able to come out on top. With a flurry of swings from his rapier and a piercing thrust, Don Quixote was barely able to support herself with her lance as the duel was concluded. Okay, for background regarding this, the source material was set in La Mancha, a region of southern central Spain, which is either derived from the Arabic descriptions of that region. Al-Mancha, land without water, or Almania, high plateau. It's a region that has few rivers, but is semi-arid overall. Apparently this was where Señor Cervantes had Don Quixote come from, to make him even more ridiculous seeming. Apparently the author Miguel de Cervantes was taking the out of the region. Manchego is not only what the people of that region are called, it's also a kind of cheese that comes from there, made from the milk of the local breed of sheep. Don Quixote, after this battle, this duel, saw her injuries as a light wound, telling Camille that he was mistaken if such a meagre wound could. Dante saw that her pain was saying otherwise. In fact, her injuries were outright crippling, if not fatal. Camille definitely wasn't all talk and no trousers. The speed and precision told them that, well, that's what a typical sunk association fixer should be. Dante couldn't bear to look at Don Quixote squirm in pain, but didn't want time to be inverted there. It would be too much for her. As Dante didn't do that yet, Don Quixote continued to claim that she wasn't done, as if she was the Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Camille was disappointed at this waste of his blade. Thankfully, he wasn't live streaming, as he wouldn't want others to hear of that duel, as they might think that he was bullying up the poor amateur in front of him. Paula told him that was enough. It was no crime to wish for the safety of all victims. Camille was unconcerned. Apparently her attitude needed correction, seeing what she said was nonsense. Not knowing who she was talking to. Oh, she knew exactly who she was talking to. She was just insane. And be thankful you didn't fight her when she was barefoot. Otherwise it would have been more one-sided on her side of it. Camille saw things like honour and justice to be a bad joke. Han Ul put a stop to this, as it's a waste of energy that was needed for La Mancha Land. If they continue with this, she'll intervene personally. Alessio informed them that La Mancha Land will appear in approximately 1 hour. After that, it may appear at any moment, asking them to remain in close proximity to their teams in case of emergency. Yeah, if they're separate, it'll make it easier to hunt them down. Yeah. Dante was thankful for this intervention, and Don Quixote was groaning in pain, and it was more than her pride that was wounded. Dante then advised them to go inside the now empty tent, as they can't invert time in front of the others. Well, the others that aren't with Limbus Company. Yeah, that really showed how below standard the default identity is, isn't it? Until next time, hail the rabbit!